Good morning and welcome to our Facebook Live event. My name is Ailsa Kepi and I'm curator of the group here on Facebook, Women Healing from Emotional Abuse with Power, Passion, and Pleasure. And I'm also a relationship and somatic coach. And I will explain more about that if you're interested. You can also check out my website, ailsakepi.com or pleasureforhealth.com. So today I am going to dive into and just have kind of a bit of an informal chat about this phenomenon that many of us start our journey trying to do. And that is asking the question, why me? And who did this to me? And this is where a lot of us start when we've had a hard time. Something's happened to us. We've been abused. We've had trauma. Somebody has done something to us and we've been victimized. And this may or may not be true if you want to say true in that sense. We may have had these types of experiences. And most of us want to know, why did this happen to me? And who can I blame for this? Because it sounds petty when we say it like that, but many of us, if we really search our hearts, actually start off with this, like, whose fault was this? And, we either go to, it was his fault or her fault, my partner's fault, maybe my parents' fault. But sometimes we come back to, and other types of people will point the finger back at themselves and go, well, it's my fault. And, I just wanted to chat about this because really, does it help us at all? This is a question for all of us to consider. Does it help at all to say it's your fault or it's my fault? Like, where does that get us, really, in the end of the day, as far as moving forward or being more healthy or gaining self-esteem or having more self-confidence? Does finding someone or something to blame change anything about our experience? And I'm asking that to you to actually consider. Some of us may be familiar with the old movie. I'm going to date myself here, but the old movie Princess Bride. This is kind of an iconic movie, and one of the characters there is all about revenge. His entire life is about revenge. He's trying to find someone, and in a way, he kind of forgets what the revenge is even about. It just becomes its own thing. And in a way, sometimes when we've had abuse or we feel like we've had an unfair life, an unfair things have happened to us, we feel like if, it gives us energy to go, whose fault is this? Like, is it, if we can just find someone to blame, then they can take all the, somehow we can undo our experience, somehow this person or this thing that it's that person's fault, they can take it back, like just take it back. And really underneath it all, we kind of are asking the universe to just be like, can we just do, can we redo this? Like, cut. We want another take. And so finding someone to blame is kind of like saying, I don't like this. This wasn't fair. This isn't cool. Take it back. I want to try again. And, really honestly, one of the biggest keys to starting to work on yourself and to experience a different way of relating, a different, more pleasure-filled life, is actually accepting where you are and what has brought you here and the reality of your experience. And it doesn't mean we have to go back into the trauma and say it was okay, or back into the abuse and say okay to any of it. It may not have been okay. In fact, it's, pretty much 100% not okay to be abused or traumatized or have these horrible things happen. However, having happened, we want to start here. And you can kind of imagine that if you start looking in the past for someone to blame, whether that's you or another person or your parents or your grandpa or whoever, it was that led you to this, we're looking in the past. We're now no longer in the present moment. And when we're not in the present moment, we're not able to actually begin a process of healing because we're not present, And for those of you who've done some healing, I know there's quite a few of you out there that have started on your journey in different formats. You'll know that if you're not actually present right now, if you're in the past or even in the future concerned about what might happen, we're not able to actually shift anything, because that's just the nature. One of the laws of the universe is right now is right now. And this is where we can shift things. So I thought this was a really important thing to actually bring out, because so many of us start there. We look for someone to blame. And if we can't find anyone to blame out there, we'll turn it on ourselves and blame ourselves and spend a lot of time and energy wasting, blaming ourselves, kind of putting our own self-confidence down, not getting on with what we need to do to actually heal, because, now I'm not worth healing because I caused all of this. I must be a horrible person. You can see how that kind of train of thought gets ingrained in many of us and actually stops us moving forward. It becomes a saboteur in ourself, whether it's blaming outside or blaming inside. So you can see where I fall on this, and that looking for someone else to blame is kind of a fruitless way to spend your energy. Now, having said that, I'm never completely black and white, and it's not that finding someone to blame, is completely pointless. There may be some recognition of, that person actually was being abusive, and I need to recognize that that was abuse. And I need to recognize that I survived that abuse, or I took that in, and, that affected me. Like, recognizing the truth of the fact that someone was abusive, because I've done other videos in this group about denial, and many of us start off with that as well, denying that any abuse happened at all. So realizing that something happened to us or with us or, in our life, we experienced something, abuse, trauma, all of those things. And recognizing that someone else or some other people are, were involved is helpful as a starting point. However, that doesn't change the fact that right now in the present moment, blaming someone else for it still doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't help us have a better relationship. It doesn't help us move forward in our life. It doesn't help us build confidence. It doesn't help us have great self-esteem. It doesn't help us get out of the abusive relationship if that's what we want. It doesn't help us get clear about intentions. You can see how it basically, okay, so you realize that someone else was involved in this process for whatever reason, and understanding the whys and wherefores that this person has abused you still doesn't help you move forward with any of your own healing. You could spend the rest of your life trying to understand, narcissistic behavior, psychopathic behavior, sociopaths. Like, you could try to understand why they did what they did. But even that is not going to take away the fact that you may have experienced abuse or trauma at the hands of a person, perhaps, or many people. That still does not get you anywhere. So, take as long as you need to in that space, no judgment, but ask yourself this question: am I getting anywhere by figuring out everyone else's problem out there? Why they abused me, they were, whatever it is. You might be empathic, you might be compassionate, all of the things. You might realize that they grew up with abuse of their own, but all of that is out there. It's not doing your own healing work. So take as long as you need to realize that that's not getting you anywhere, that you're spinning your wheels. And when you are ready to do your own work, here's what we need to kind of change. We need to make a shift. And we need to go from saying, who's to blame for me, for, giving me this horrible experience or putting me through this trial. And we need to look at take a step back and almost look in a more symbolic way at our life. And I help people do this in my programs. We spend some time over the course of the first few weeks, saying, okay, you experienced these things, and where has that led you? What strengths has that grown in you? What awareness or consciousness has that brought up? What qualities in you have responded to that, maybe in a positive way, that have given you something to rely on? And to give you a concrete example, for myself, I would say that, going along in my life, I was kind of not really completely consciously choosing. I was kind of going along, doing things that came up, kind of following whatever was there in front of me. And I would say that having experienced, a number of years, like 18 years of an abusive relationship, now when I've gotten out of that and I've done my inner work, when I look back at that, I go, wow, okay, I'm no longer willing to just be blindly kind of going along, doing whatever comes up. I'm now aware that my choice matters. I'm now aware that I get to choose. I'm now aware that, I have an intention and a goal with my life. And if I don't actually step up and choose the choices that are going to help me to do that, I'm going to continue to feel lost and kind of broken and bored and, distrusting and all of the things. And that I have this power in me. And so I no longer feel at the mercy of the universe. I have this kind of inner knowing that, you know what? I did get through some really difficult times. I figured out during my, many years in an abusive marriage, how to make do with very little money, how to come up with things when we didn't have anything because, my ex was spending it all or whatever. And now those fears don't take me down when I have my own business, for instance. Sure, I still get some, jitters about some things, but underneath all of that, I gained these qualities of knowing, trusting in myself. And so would I ever give back and say, I wish though that 18 years never happened? No, I wouldn't actually, because that actually made me where I am today. And I know that sounds very trite, and you might go, oh yeah, you just have to, appreciate everything. It's not as simple as that. There's a deep inner knowing that comes when you really look at yourself and look at the fact that you have choice. And look at the fact that, it didn't matter that I figured out why my ex did what he did. Like, I have compassion for him actually in many ways. However, he was not willing to change and I wanted to change. And at that point, our lives went like this. Whether he was abusive or not, it was still, many relationships go like this because, one partner chooses to really take hold of life and move forward, and one kind of chooses to, whatever, just kind of drift. And, it doesn't work so well like this. So, letting go of, blame and all of that it's a process. And I'm not saying it happens overnight, but this is something we need to really wrap our head around, because punishing those people in our lives that did something to us is still not going to help us move forward and find our intention, tell our own story, find our own personal power, all of the things. It's not going to help. So the other thing that might be interesting to also remember, and this is just an aside, is that you might actually be someone else's foe. You might be someone else's blame in their life. They might be like, because of you, I didn't do this. So that's an interesting thing to notice as well. Someone's just asking a question here or making a comment. I can't see it all. So voicing your opinion is a really good start. I can't see the rest of your message, Marie, but anyway, it's a great start to realize what you want and what you need and to voice that to people. And I would just say, whenever we are voicing what we want, I work with I have a course in boundaries and consent, and this comes up quite a lot because women will say to me, but I said no, but I told them I didn't want that. And then they're quite flabbergasted to find that the person didn't listen, right? They're like, but they didn't listen to me. And it's like, what now? And I don't mean that in any kind of laughing in any one way. It's just something we do again. And it's like, if you voice what you want and where you go, and the person in front of you that you're telling that to doesn't listen, then you have to find the next level, whether that's voicing it more strongly, whether that's putting it in writing, whether that's saying, I don't feel heard by you. I think I need to find someone else who's willing to go with me to the next step because I don't feel like you're that person. We actually have to act on that. So, sometimes, the sad thing is, or maybe it's not so sad, it's just people along our path. If you think about life as a path, sometimes someone's just meant to walk that little stretch with you. They were a stepping stone to the next step. And we're not always meant to work with a psychologist or work with a particular coach or work with, or even in a relationship or have a particular friend. They may not be a lifelong partner. They may just be this was the part that they were involved in and they got you to the next step. So again, gratitude to those people for getting you there. But if you know in your heart that you need something different, you need something more, then you get to choose. Ultimately, you get to choose what that is. And, you may choose wisely. You may want to ask some people their opinion to see, get some advice on how to choose. But at the end of the day, it's your choice. So, I hope that helps with that comment. I think that's valid, when we're moving forward and we want to move forward, but we're kind of stuck. I know too that, I work with people too, and sometimes you get to the end of your journey with them and you know that you're not the person to continue with them. You know that you need to kind of hand them off to the next, hand the baton to the next person. And that's important as an ego check for those of us that work in the therapy and coaching world. We need to check ourselves and say, am I just keeping this client on because they're a bread and butter client and they bring me $100 each week, or am I actually still serving them? And that's an ethical question, and I work with that on many ethics committees in the States and Canada. We have talks about this because it's important as a therapist to realize when we are stuck as well, and we all get stuck. So we're all helping each other here. So thank you for that comment, Marie. So I think that, taking the reins and going, this is where I need to go. And something I've noticed in my life too is if we make the wrong choice, which there's never really a wrong choice. There's just maybe a longer path, a winding path, and maybe you could have gone straighter if you'd known. But let's say, you take that longer path. Life will somehow bring you back to the same place, right? Like you might meander off and do some other stuff and you'll end up back there going, well, I knew I needed to do, somatic work, let's say, for instance. And I kind of avoided it by going and taking yoga teacher training and doing this and this and this. And then realizing that I need to come back and do some of my own work. Or I go off and did a master's degree and then I came back and I realized, well, I really need to do my own work. So life will bring you back. It'll do that. And, there's nothing wrong with taking the meandering scenic route to the end result. You don't get, super big bonus points for going straight there. Sometimes the side routes are important. So if you know that you have an intention and a goal and you are feeling this is just not feeling right, or I'm feeling stuck, I actually, now that you think I'm talking about this, there was a client that I worked with for a while, and she knew that her psychologist, she and her psychologist were stuck, but she liked her psychologist, and, I think he liked her, and so they kind of stayed stuck for, 3 or 4 years, and she reached out to me to kind of jiggle things up a little bit, spice it up and sort of see, am I really, needing to move on? And, I think, I kind of nudged her and said, ask yourself, is it worth going to therapy every week when you're kind of rehashing the same stuff every time? And, she wanted to hang on to it for a while, but a year later she reached out again. We did some more work. and she's finally moved on. And actually life kind of hit her in the face with the fact that this wasn't the right therapeutic relationship for her, and she moved on kind of anyway. So it is interesting to notice how life will, give you nudges, and then if you don't take the nudge, it'll hit you in the side of the head with a 2x4 eventually and tell you, hey, get off your butt and keep moving. So that's kind of what I'm saying about when we're looking back and looking for people to blame. It's worth knowing that people did things to you. Probably you were abused. There's been some trauma, or whatever happened to you happened. That's real, and it has a real consequence. However, the solution is not in blaming or getting back at the person that did that to you, because that's not going to take you forward. So you can argue with me all you want. I know there's probably some of you out there that still are going to take a while to wrap your head around that. And that's okay. It takes everyone a while. So we want to search for this reason, like how we want to move forward. And typically that is a few things. We want to get really in touch with what we're feeling. Often underneath that search for someone to blame is sadness, grief, really. There's a deep grief, loss of years and time in your life, loss of, naivete, your innocence, loss of, maybe your beauty. Maybe you spent like your entire 20s and 30s with someone that didn't, wasn't really great for you. And it's like you spent your best years doing that, whatever. So there's grief around that. So acknowledging our emotions and our feelings around that is really important. And then being able to kind of tell your story about that is important as well. And then within that, as we tell our story, I've done a video here too, if you're interested, check out the video, telling your story for empowerment or something. Good morning, Kimberly. So we've done videos on that, because telling your story, not as a victim and not for sympathy, but to actually say, here's what happened, and here's where I'm starting from, and here's where I'm going with that. Here are the qualities and the strengths, and the silver lining that I got from all of this. And then in doing that, we claim our personal power. And we were just talking about here with Marie and a few people, like how we can take that personal power and then begin to realize we have choice around how we want to move forward. And it may not be a great choice. We always have a choice. And, so once we realize we have a choice, then we can actually start the work of moving forward. And when we do that, we start building our own self-esteem, we start building our own self-confidence, and we start building our own self-discipline. All of these self things that grow our self-esteem, so that we actually then can have our own light shining, we could call it. We're not looking out there for our self-esteem. We're not looking out there for validation, or we're not looking out there for power over anyone else, because we could just as easily become abusive to other people too, in looking for power, trying to have power over people. And we all know people that do that. So we don't want to end up just trying to find our power by taking the power of others, even if it's our abuser's power. We want to learn to create our own power, become our own sun, if you will, symbolically. And so in doing that, we start knowing who we are. I am, this person who believes in this and has these values, and this is what I'm meant to do in the world. And all of a sudden, we start having this amazing experience in life of our autonomy, of our freedom, and of actually, joy and pleasure and all those things that I hear everyone wanting. It starts coming to you because you're creating it within your own self. Now, that might sound like an incredible shift. I know that it's like becoming an overnight success in 10 years, right? It's that kind of a thing. You might have heard that in business, they're an overnight success. But, you don't realize that the last 10 years they were slogging away, at their computer or whatever. And then all of a sudden there was a shift. And that is very much how this kind of work sometimes happens, is that we look, we work and we work and we work and it doesn't feel like we're getting anywhere. And then we get that shift. And all of a sudden, like, for me, all of a sudden I had a new partner who was willing to move across the country to be with me. And then all of a sudden I have my own retreat center, and all of a sudden, we're doing amazing, incredible work here. And it wasn't all of a sudden, of course. I guess you probably got that. So anyway, this is how the work happens. And day by day, you kind of think maybe you're not getting anywhere, but I guarantee that this symbolic shift will happen when you're ready. So, it's definitely the power dynamics in relationships are really important. That's true, Kimberly. So I'm glad you brought that up. We will have to do some more videos on power hungry individuals. And, if we don't know how to build our own power, we have no choice but to go looking for other people to get power from, because we take, if you think of power like a power socket, plugging it in, we actually need power to live. We need power to live our life. And if we can't generate our own power, if we don't become generators, we're going to be users, if you will. We're going to be power users. And we're going to plug into all these other people and drain all the power from other places. So do you want to be a generator, or do you want to be a power, user? And that's, no judgment there either. But I would highly say that if you're watching this video and you're in my group, you're probably wanting to be a power generator. And I love that about you. And I think that if you're interested in starting this work, I'm going to drop a link in the comments about my Radical Responsibility, the Power of Choice course. It's an online course. It's self-guided. It's not that long. You can really get to grips with why you are or are not making the choices that you want to be making in your life right now. And that's an introductory course to working with me more fully and personally with some coaching. So I'm going to drop the link in the comments for that. It's not that expensive. It is definitely worth your time to just start this process. Every step you take helps you to create more choice, more freedom, and more momentum for you in your healing. So I hope this has been interesting. I hope this has given you something to think about. And I really hope that you will reach out in whatever way, reach out by DM, get in my Facebook group, watch my free webinar on my website, ailsakepi.com. It's absolutely free. It takes you through these 5 steps to work through how to build your self-confidence. And Kimberly is offering a mantra she heard recently, which I love that. I refuse all conflicts, both internal and external. There's something to work towards as well. I refuse all conflict. I can give you a little tidbit, actually, now that you bring that up. Just this morning, so just to show you how sneaky these conflicts can actually be. Just this morning, I was having breakfast, and I had an internal conflict going on in that, my mom asked me to do something, and I sort of, not that I couldn't be bothered, but I have a lot of other things to do. So I was like, if you could take care of that, that'd be great. But in my head, I knew I needed to actually wrap my head around the thing that I asked her to take care of. And so I had this internal conflict. That I needed to be doing that, but that I also had a lot of other things to do, and it would be really great if she could do it. So there was a conflict, and as long as that was in conflict, I was feeling torn, and so actually not able to move forward with either my other tasks or that completely. I mean, I'm pretty good at kind of blanking things out and getting on with some things, but that is interesting to notice how many internal conflicts you have. I should have gone to the gym today and I didn't. I went and watched Netflix after work instead. If you're still beating yourself up about that, there's a conflict there. It's draining your energy. So we'll have to do another video about that too. But just to show that it is very sneaky, these things are really sneaky. Hence, the really good idea to find somebody that you trust, find somebody to work with. Find a coach, find a psychologist, find a counselor, that you trust to point some of these out, to mirror some of your things to you, and not to be afraid to do so, because these things are sneaky. We don't see them in ourselves all the time. So, ideally we want some really awesome friends or partner or therapist in our life to kind of point that out, because we're all on this journey somewhere. So thanks for that. And I will let you all go for this morning, but thank you so much for joining me live if you were here live. And hopefully those watching the video, the replay, will appreciate the thoughts. Let me know what you think, make some comments, and I hope to see you again next week.